Hi, welcome and welcome back. Today I want to get into why it's easier to create in survival mode in this wrong place. Why it's easier to create in the wrong place. Know what I mean by that? We tend to create in survival mode because we have had these patterns ingrained in us because we're professional. But when we started our careers, it was through that childlike curiosity, that drive, that passion to create that made us make the decision to make this an actual career and to do something with it, to profit off of it, and to turn it into something that can be a livelihood. But over time, especially if you're in corporate environments or you've been in corporate environments in the past, you know that you get ingrained into the culture that you're in. And so through that professional transition, as you become more seasoned, you get used to the approval process, what your managers expect, what your clients expect. And there's this quietness that is inside of us, this creative quietness or this creativity that tends to start to get a little quiet. We get overloaded with burnout, we get overloaded with responsibilities and overwhelm, and we drift away from that internal source, that like source of creativity where that child is free to play. And we think that we've lost it, it's sort of run its course, we're just not creative anymore. And we're so dismayed by what we've had to deal with in the corporate world or any sort of like freelance business, clients, anything in that, and anything in that regard, that we don't really know how to recover because the burnout is burnt. And it's so bad that it's really hard to figure out the steps back to it. And so hopefully you've either had those experiences and then they're in the past, or if you are going through this, I know what it feels like and I'm here for you. And there's different techniques and interventions. And there's a quiz down below. If you're somewhere along the line of burnout and you need to get a better assessment, check the link below. And so when we get into this place of feeling this distance and this drift from where we loved creating from and where we're at in our professional career, we don't really know where to go to. We have generic tips for burnout. We don't really have a good sense of what it is that we need for ourselves. And there's not a lot necessarily on how to be more creative that's outside of a technique or a tool or a task. And there really has to be something deeper, right? I feel like what I see out there is these basic instructions to journal, to write, to, and while that's necessary for us to nurture that inner world inside of us, I think what tends to get missed or just implied that somehow we'll figure it out is the shift of perspective, the regulation of the nervous system of the body, understanding and interpreting the signals, learning how to take emotions that we wrestle with and redirect that energy into a creative force. And so this is what creative wisdom is about and everything that I teach, so that we can go back to that source place, returning to that source so that we can tap into it. And that becomes the default state, that the source creation mode is the default state, and that we know how to maneuver and manage through life, whatever it brings to us, in a way that we can go back to doing what it is that we love. That's the ultimate goal. We have a short amount of time here. We want to have as much fun as possible. And so part of the transition from being in this survival mode that we're almost even unconscious of that we do, especially if we're in a place that we don't really enjoy anymore, and there's just a push to keep going because it's your livelihood and that's what you need to do. We have to rewire the nervous system. And I feel like that term gets used a lot, but we have to really look at the body and mind connection, how we handle emotions, which I think is like the biggest part that we have a hard time discussing, and then being able to hold that and then move that to a different direction that we want to take it in. And so, what I want to share with you in this little practice, in this little video, and maybe even a little practice, is to think about the beginning foundation of a practice that starts you in this source creation. Because we've spent so much time building these habits of being frustrated before we open our laptop or open a file, or being disoriented or having too many things going on before we create, having our mind filled with lots of different thoughts and conversations that don't belong in that space. And so what we want to do is kind of clear the air, clear the space, the energetic space around us so that we can just focus in within and then look forward and put our attention in the place that we want to put it in. And this is really the key that has been going on for generations. In any type of spiritual text that you've ever seen, in any type of philosophy, there is this understanding that having any type of practice is practiced daily. And so if we can change our habits on a daily basis in the most minute way, in the way we show up, in the way we center ourselves, in the way we take a deep breath to regulate the nervous system, to reduce the stress, to clear the mind and focus, makes a world of difference over time. These are small things that you can do at your desk or wherever that it is that you create, but it's a way that you're shifting. It's a way that we're alchemizing and digesting our emotions, because at the end of the day, it is always you versus you. And so sometimes we can get thoughts and emotions as obstacles in front of us that we need to clear out. Not dismiss, not push away, not bypass, but clear out for the moment when we have work that we need to do. We have creative work that we need to do because there's something really special about that. And so in this practice that I like to do every morning, as soon as I wake up, before I start my work, at the end of the day, there are just these little pauses that I like to take and go within. And it helps me reset and reorganize where I want to shift my focus. And it lets me observe what's going on within so that I can address what's coming up. If there a lot of times we'll have emotions coming through us that we don't have words for. We don't even know why we feel the way we feel sometimes. It just comes through. And we're just sort of left with something, even though our mind can logically tell us that this is, and that it is what it is. And we have all these thoughts and worries and frustrations and just different things from the day coming through that can kind of hook us and drag us through the energetic, emotional mud. Before we know it, we've eaten away at hours of the day and we've lost them days on end. We can't get out of an emotion. And I feel like this is such this is like the creative super juice. All of the emotions that you have are the essence of what it is that you're going to create. It's like pure, it's pure energy. We just have an emotional attachment to things and thoughts attached to that energy. And if we can convert it and move it in a direction that actually fuels something of beauty, of luxury, of something you want to create, of something of a need in the world as a response to the feeling that you're doing without it being antagonistic, is what fuels you and builds legends. It builds legacy. That's what it is that we want to do. So the first part really is just to get into this place that we start to establish a foundation of shifting. We'll go into more specifics on that, but I just want to give you this setup of when we go in, before you start any of your work, sit for a moment and really just observe what's going on. Observe the thoughts that are going by. Observe the way you're breathing. Observe how your shoulders are, your chest is, your jaw, and just start to loosen up. Flex your jaw muscles, shift your shoulders around. Take 3 very long, deep breaths. So much so that you're inhaling as much as you possibly can, and then you're exhaling out. And what you're doing is you're allowing the breath to calm down the nerves, slow down the heart rate, and inevitably clear your mind because you're focused on your breath. And you sit. And what you want to ask yourself is, what does this creative want to become? What creativity wants to come through? What is this work trying to be? And let something arrive. There's a pause. There's silence. There's an uncomfortableness with just sitting with yourself without having anything in front of you. Look out the window. Gaze into the nothingness and the being. where you actually can feel your heartbeat and you can feel your body moving around without any interpretation. And just let the answer arrive and let it come to you. And if you're in a time box and nothing arrives, still keep the practice. Still keep showing up because one day it will. And just like we put on, and just like when we're in settings that we don't want to be in, and we still show up and we still meet the deadline and we still make the client happy, same thing with this practice. We still show up even on days we don't want to. But I can tell you from experience, by doing this, it just becomes such a natural part of the creativity. It's not something I have to think about anymore, which is the beautiful part of the nervous system. My body already knows to get into this, to get into this rhythm, to get into this place, to start loosening up. Can you imagine that before work? Before you start your work, that you're actually loosening yourself and relaxing yourself. Most people get really tense. They're really anxious. They're kind of on guard. Their shoulders are up to their neck. It's a very different experience depending on where you start. And by doing this, we start to, as simply as possible, recalibrate the nervous system. This is something you can do in public. This is something you can do out in the world. Nobody's going to know because it will look like you're just staring at your computer, or you're just looking out the window for a minute, or if you have to go off to the side for a little bit, or maybe you don't even do this at work, but this is something that you can incorporate even in a meeting. It's a way that you can get right back into center and right back into what it is that you need to do. And what will happen over time when this becomes a daily practice is that you're allowing this open space, this internal cave, if you will, where you're housing a space for intuition, insights, downloads, visions to show up. You've welcomed them in, and they will arrive. They will always arrive, but on their time. And all we have to do is make the space for it. And if it's something that you really enjoy, it might be also a way that you end work, where you sort of show a sign of gratitude for what it is that you got to do today, what you were able to create, no matter what it was, that you got ahead a little bit further, or that you understood something a little bit more, or that you had understood something even about yourself a little bit more. And that quantifies over time when we start adding that energy to encapsulate it. It starts to become sacred, and we sanctify it because we're now boxing this in as a very precious time. And then we deal with the rest of the world. And this becomes very sacred, and we can allow more connectivity and more channeling to come through that just makes the work better. I have a workshop coming up on June 9th called Returning to Source, and we have 4 sessions where we go over this. We really tap in and we use where we're at in the moment and what's going on to connect back to source, to contemplate, because I think this is the richest muse for creatives to have. And put that wherever you want, and we create. The prompts will be to create in a way that is just not with an objective, not with any rules, not with any criticism, of just pure, pure expression for you. And a way that you can kind of tap in where you might not usually allow yourself to open up and to contemplate and to think in this way, but will absolutely benefit you when you do your regular work, because you'll be able to have this new perspective. And that is why people pay you as a creative. It's because of your perspective. It's because of the way you see things. It's because of the way that you make something come alive. And so we need to nurture that artistic perspective in how we start looking at shape, form, color, life, moments, energy, all of it together. And these textures that we put, and this essence of what it is to create, that is like the initial seed and the stepping stone before we can actually get the vision, before we can actually put pen to paper. So link down below. I'd love for you to join me on this nice little journey, on this great little journey where we can explore together, build the foundation for source creation, and then start creating. Thank you so much for being here. I love you all, and I will see you next time. Take care. Bye.